It's John Galante, president of AE Ventures, the folks that produce the Housing Transformation Summit, and I'm happy today to be joined by Lance and Amber Boyce, who are the co-founders of Mono Slab, which is an innovative home foundation company, now in its 5th year. Welcome, Lance and Amber, and maybe you can kick us off here today with a little bit of a backgrounder on yourselves and your experience in the building and construction industry and the founding of Mono Slab. What was kind of the origin, the driver that prompted you to found this company 5 years ago?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us on. And usually on the introductions, we'll turn that over to Amber and we'll let her kind of give a background of what we've been doing all this time.
Okay.
Yeah, so thanks for having us. Lance and I have been married 26 years. Out of that 26 years, 25 of it, we've been self-employed. Mono Slab kind of came about in an organic fashion. We have built and been in general contractors for that 25 years. And in 2008, when the economy fell apart, we had to look and find different solutions to still maintain work. We live in Eastern Idaho, right on the Yellowstone National border line. So West Yellowstone, we're 15 minutes away from that border. So we're in a second home market. In that second home market, when 2008 did fall apart, we still had people that were interested in cabin constructions. And Lance and I still had work, but our labor force all left construction and went to the oil fields. And so Lance and I were left to do a lot of our own construction our own labor. Lance and I and our 2 kids set up and poured our own concrete. We did a lot of our own carpentry. We did some electrical work. We did finish work. We did whatever it took to survive. During that process, Lance and I really got on to doing foundations. And what we would do is we needed to save as much money as we could and make as much money at the same time. And so we looked at the frost protected shallow foundation section of code, which is IRC code 403.3. And in that section of code, it allows you to go a shallower foundation by using alternative methods, as in insulation. So we started doing the traditional monolithic slab forming work where we would build forms, we would set forms, it would take 150 stakes, 150 kickers. We would prep this site. It would take 7 or 8, 10 days to prep just to pour the concrete. And then it would take 4 or 5 days to clean up from that process. And so, Lance and I set up 4 houses this way in one season. And just the multiple step process, I said to him, Lance, you've got a bad shoulder. If you tear your shoulder out on the site, I can't form concrete. I can pour concrete all day long. Believe it or not, the pour days are the easy days. It's the setup and tear down. I physically can't do what you do. We've got to find something. So he got online and looked and looked and looked and looked for a fast forming system, something that provided an insulation value, something that did more than just the traditional methods of wood and stakes and kickers and, expensive waste and all that. He tried to really look at something. There was nothing out in the market. So he sat down in November and just honestly sketched up our first prototype. We had it cut and designed and all of those things. We had it brought back to the house. He and I looked over it over the winter, and then we decided to try our first Mono Slab EZ Form. So our forming process started just that organic way to solve a problem. Number 1, to increase efficiencies of construction. And number 2, simple and effective, but provide a far superior result than compared to traditional methods.
Yeah.
And so we put our first project in the ground, and our local inspector came to inspect the site. And he looked at both Lance and I and says, "What is this?" And so Lance explained, "Hey, this is a form. This is what I want to do." He says, "You realize this exceeds IRC code." Lance says, "Yeah, but I'm using it because, the fast forming and all these things." He says, "No, this is great." And he, at that point, inspired us and said, "You guys need to get a patent on this. You need to go down this, because as an inspector, you should see the things I see out in the field. this would eliminate so many steps and processes for me, and your product can't fail this section of code. And so that's what I did. Lance continued to build. He says, okay, go down this process. Once I started going in, doing the patent process and realizes the expense that was coming into play, the same time that we got our first utility patent and we started that process, all of a sudden I started getting phone calls about our product all the way from, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota. And by the end of that season, I told Lance, hey, this thing really has legs. I think I can outperform you profit-wise. You need to stop construction and let's do this full-time. And so that's kind of how it organically started. It was a simple, easy process. The unintended things we didn't realize is, number one, there is not a universal forming process out there across the country. Mono Slab can definitely provide a standardized approach for forming all the way from Maine, all the way to El Paso, Texas, all the way clear up to Minnesota, all the way over to Seattle, Washington. We did not realize all the different forming methods out there. We understood a few of them, but when you go across the country, foundation forming process is the single-handedly the most different process across the country. You can get the same window in Idaho as you can get in Florida. You can get the same shingles you can in, California as you can in Idaho. You cannot get the same foundation. What Mono Slab can do is provide us the same foundation process all across the country and provide the insulation value needed to meet those code requirements depending on your air freezing index.
And why do you think there was not uniformity on this?
I think there was a lack of uniformity because especially concrete subcontractors across the United States are generational. They're not unlike a ranch family where the chances are if there's a contractor that's working and doing a specific contractor's work, his father was more than likely a contractor and his grandfather was more than likely a concrete contractor. So those businesses are generational. And it's funny, often they stop at county lines or state lines. One methodology changes from the other. And so the uniformity is definitely different. You could take Utah, Idaho, and Wyoming in some of Montana and bundle them up together and it would look the same. Yeah. We could travel into North Dakota and it would change at the state line just because geographically those regions change a little bit.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about the features, benefits, advantages of your products. Sure. It's an opportunity to be uniform across the country, but how do you compare to some of the other methods and forming?
Sure. So when we look at the other methods, if you look in the United States and you say, okay, what's the baseline for a good solid foundation that's also affordable? And we take and say, okay, monolithic slab foundations historically have been over 80% of the foundations built, 70% of the foundations built in the United States. Largely that's due to a few things. One is cost. But the second thing is a monolithic foundation typically has not satisfied the frost code. That hasn't mattered a whole lot because when you look at where most of the homes are built in the United States, there is no frost line. Texas, Florida, California, those types of places don't have a frost line to deal with. And so when we looked at this and got into the code's been in place in IRC since 1996. The science is much, much older, but it has been in place for 25 years. And all of a sudden, you're able to utilize a foundation that a Southern California home contractor would use or a Dallas, Texas contractor would use, strategically place insulation around it, and use the preferred method. The majority of foundations are done. Make a slight alteration to it by encapsulating it with insulation, combination of horizontal and vertical, and all of a sudden we can employ that foundation as far north as Fargo, Minnesota, or Fargo, North Dakota, Duluth, Minnesota. All of a sudden we've brought the efficiency of a Central Texas builder to Minnesota. So all of a sudden we're not excavating below the frost line. We're not using concrete to extend the footing below the frost line. The rebar goes down. The carbon footprint to achieve this foundation is I'm sure cut in half or more, because we have reduced all those steps. And all of a sudden we're able to have a Minnesota contractor compete dollar for dollar with a Dallas contractor as far as what a house costs in two regions.
So there's no structure built and then removed. The form itself remains with the concrete and is providing insulation that's integral with the concrete.
That's a great question. You're exactly correct. So Amber and I, even before we did Mono Slab EZ Form, we believe with the labor shortage that Amber talked about, that things that walk into a construction site need to be part of that construction site. This idea that we show up with trucks and walk things in and walk things out and reload them and take them away, that's the low-hanging fruit for efficiency of home builders. So you're exactly correct. The form is walked in. What I wanted to do to satisfy our own problems that Amber had talked about is, if I'm going to buy a form or set up a form, I want it to be my code compliant insulation, because a standard Mono Slab EZ Form only weighs 8 pounds for an 8-foot length. So offloading the truck, 2 forms can be walked in at the same time. They're 16 pounds in hand. We are 4 times the required R value that code tells us that we need to be. And then we go ahead and prep and do our underground and do those things necessary for those other steps. We place the concrete in there. As we place the concrete in there and it cures out, that insulation that has served as the form and the insulation now just becomes the insulation. And insulation and concrete make a perfect bond. It's like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Those bond together and that insulation is stuck to that foundation for the life of the home.
Cool. So you have different versions of the product? There's multiple products, right? What are some of the differences?
We have a good product lineup. And so as we'd kind of discussed about getting it so that a Minnesota home builder could take a cost comparison or a cost breakdown and have it look more like a Dallas, Texas, same methodology with a slight change to it. We do have different sizes and versions of the Mono Slab EZ Form available. If we go into a place like Texas, we may be into a 16-inch form, a standard form. When we get, to a place like Fargo, North Dakota, we could be into what we have branded as an Arctic form or a commercial form. And all that says is, hey, we're going to deal with more cold nights. We're going to deal with a little different energy code up here, because we're all talking about these heating and cooling days. And obviously, when we're trying to heat a house from 0 degrees Fahrenheit to 72, that's an awful big gap. Versus in Dallas, Texas, where we might say, I want to take it from 72 degrees or from 100 degrees and cool it to 72. We don't need quite as much insulation down there. So we've matched those different regions with the appropriate size of insulation for the IRC, the IBC, and also the IEC, the energy code.
So what are your main points of differentiation, your advantages versus some of the alternatives?
So I'm just going to talk about some basic advantages of Mono Slab. Mono Slab allows you to form, insulate, backfill, all before the placement of concrete. You have minimal excavation. We're able to take a traditional home from excavation to framing in 3 days, whereas a traditional method, you're 2 to 3 weeks, or on production style, it's still 7 to 8 days. So on a production home builder, we're saving them 4 to 5 days on their construction time, or on a another home builder or other home builders that build 10 to 25 homes a year, we can save them 2 to 3 weeks on their construction time.
Right.
So as far as the advantages of it, some of these things were, when I looked at this, I had my concrete hat on and I'm looking at it going, how do I pound less stakes? How do I do this quicker?
Concrete hat has to be pretty heavy.
Yeah. Look, it wore the hair right off.
See, now that explains a lot.
I should have had a chin strap on it.
Yeah.
So when we look at that and we go, okay, from the concrete contractor's perspective, how do I carry things in one time? How do I go quick? And traditionally, a monolithic slab has what we call a kicker every 2 to 4 feet. to hold the hydraulic pressure of the concrete from blowing the forms out. And so when I look at that and I go, if we build this insulation into a shape like a triangle, then all of a sudden we can backfill before the pour, and we're going to let all that earth do the heavy lifting on the hydraulic weight, the hydraulic pressure. And so with Mono Slab EZ Form, from the concrete contractor's perspective, they form the corner, screw it together, and there is no additional bracing or kickers or extra staking.
Yeah. So a lot of time saving, and I'm relatively sure that results in dollar savings. Is that
exactly
correct? So what's the differential on the cost side of things, fully loaded, including the labor and materials for you guys versus typical?
If you're fully loaded and you're in a market that's doing a footer and a stem wall like Salt Lake City or Denver, you could be as much as $8 a square foot savings in an industry that fights for a nickel. And so there's excavation, there's concrete volume, there's labor. That's simple math. We don't figure daily interest on us. It's just simple math.
Yeah.
If we compare it to something in the Midwest, we might be more like $4 compared to their trench and cap style system. Even when we go to places like Dallas, Texas, where they're really dialed in, they're already doing monolithic slabs. They're already using the smallest amount of concrete available. We can still crush the labor side because a typical production home, a good 3-man crew will form that in an hour and 15 minutes with Mono Slab EZ Form.
Very cool. And how does it work? I mean, are you just shipping forms to the job sites, or are they buying it through distribution? And what sort of training is in place for the subs? And is there special concrete required? How do you support this from a process perspective?
Absolutely. So when Lance and I first started, we realized, number one, our heart's in it for the contractor and the concrete contractor, because that's what we were. So we wanted to make sure, number one, we had good distribution. We wanted to make sure we are in with reputable companies and that we had a good distribution footprint. We have that. We are currently in about 150 stores across the United States. In order for someone to be a distributor of ours, they have to buy in full semi-load quantities. They have to be a brick and mortar building. They have to be in the construction industry.
And stock product. If they don't stock product, they're not on our supplier list, because it's important to Lance and I to have that product available to the end user. And so we do. We have a really good footprint for distribution. As far as, our technical support, we have a great website. I know you hear that all day long from everybody. Oh, my website's the best. We have put a lot of effort into our website, and we've got a lot of technical support. We actually have 2 full-time tech representatives that honestly, when they call into the office and they have simple questions, anything from, hey, what kind of stakes do I use? Or, hey, what kind of concrete do I use? Or, hey, this is my house plan. Tell me how to do this. We have tech support that they can call in, and they can get an actual person on the line to walk through their process with them. I might add that those 2 gentlemen on tech support are foundation builders.
Yes.
They are the real deal. You get somebody on the phone that's going to give you real answers in real time.
Yes. And so we handle that. We also have, through our website, we have an info at, so that if you look at Mono Slab EZ Form, you click on the info at, you can just ask a simple question, and those responses are responded back within 24 hours. Most of the time it's same day, but if you catch us on the weekend or something that way. For the large home builders, we work with some large home builders. We're right on some transitional points with some of those guys. We do offer demos and setups for them. They have to have a commitment of 5 to 10 houses for us to come out and do demos with them. But what our demo does is actually help train and transition their crews from a traditional method to Mono Slab EZ Form. We want to leave them ready to go and ready to roll right with Mono Slab. And so we really take a hands-on approach with our customers, because we don't want them to have a failure. We actually, like I said, our heart's in it for the contractor and the end user. We were both. And those things matter, is that we can put our money where our mouth is and support our product.
How many builder clients do you all have?
Oh gosh, there's an awful lot.
In the hundreds?
In the hundreds.
Yeah, in the hundreds.
Yeah.
And is there someone you'd characterize as kind of a hero customer who, sees their relationship with you as strategic and they're not just buying on price and availability? I mean,
yeah, we started with Basler Homes out of Greeley, Fort Collins area in Colorado. They really embraced the change. Jamie is a heck of a leader. He actually brought everybody in there at the boardroom and said, listen, the value and the dollars support this transition. And he actually, I really looked up to him because he told the whole crew, burn the ships. We're not going back. And that is how real change is made. And he's a great example of that. He's had a lot of success. He finds more ways to use it every day. Not to say that Jamie doesn't still do an occasional basement home, but Jamie has found a way to put a really nice home together and make that home affordable when affordability is going right out the window.
Yeah.
And so Jamie has done a great job. His team's done a great job. And so we're really proud to be associated with them. I think they've been going 2.5 years now.
2.5 years. They've probably done over 750 homes with our forms now in the Colorado market.
Multifamily, residential.
Absolutely. And Jamie's process in this has been different than some of the other large home builders, but his eye is on his projects all the way from the top, all the way to the bottom. He will not and did not let his concrete guy run him on the change. He said, I have to capture this change. I know you're my concrete guy. I know you've been in our family business and your dad worked for my dad. And he said, Scott, you're changing the process.
And they were effective.
Did. But it had to happen at the top. So many times when Lance and I do go out on these demos, and so many times when we are on the construction site, it's actually hard to watch. But we're finding in this industry right now that the concrete guy is in control of the general contractor.
It's definitely bottom-up management because everybody's scared to make these changes.
Yeah. Do you start with the bigger builders with tests and trials on a handful of homes or a community, and then you're able to expand the penetration?
It kind of happens both ways. We just mentioned Basler Homes. They just took it and run with it. We didn't do demos, but demos are kind of typical. Like Amber said, if they commit to 5 or 10, because to be quite honest, like we'd mentioned, we can set up once the excavation is complete, we can set up a typical home in an hour and 15 minutes. So obviously to make that journey to Maryland or New Jersey or any of these places, hey, that's, we're going to be on much more travel time than we are install time. Yeah. And so, and we'd learned this from Jamie as well. He said, in this business, when you do 30, you become a professional. And when you do 1, you become, frustrated or have questions. And so we kind of lifted some things off from him. And so we like to do it that way. But yes, we start at the bottom. And so a typical situation would say X builder calls and says, hey, we're interested. What can you do to help us? The first thing I say is link me with the architect and engineer so that as we make this change on the plan, I have my eyes on it. I make sure that we're getting it code compliant so that when we turn into the municipality that we sell right through, because they may or may not be familiar with it. So we work that process from the get-go. We schedule that time to do those demos. And then those 2 gentlemen that Amber had talked about that are on the tech side and the code side, go out to these demos and actually put boots on the ground to help. Yeah. We were so hands-on, we were raised hands-on that we are going to put our money where our mouth is. We go up and help you you're not in it alone. Yeah. And so we see that through all the way to that point. And then by the time they've done that first week worth, they're pretty much up and running because the process is very simple.
Are there any other structural components that your slabs integrate with, the stuff that's sitting on the foundation, the piers and what have you? Do you have any sort of complementary products that you are connected to?
Amber and I were almost strictly second home, vacation home, high-end home contractors because of geographically where we are. So when we started into Mono Slab and Amber from the get-go, we've done an awful lot of buildings that have steel I-beams on them, airplane hangars, Dollar General stores, those kind of things. And so when you look at the agriculture side and the industrial and light commercial side, we're as relevant there as we are in residential space. And that wasn't our world, but it is hand in glove and works very well. We also work very well. You know, there's a lot of ICF brands out there, but we're compatible to work with ICFs. If somebody wants to build a Nudura or a Fox Block or any of these other type homes, we are compatible with that, and it's very hand in glove as well.
Very cool. What else should builders know about your company?
I think the biggest thing is our support system, basically from that first word go, that we're going to be available to get them through that change. The other thing is our product is manufactured in the United States. So when you look at a market like we're in right now today, and somebody says, I need a load of forms, I can get them to you. I can make sure they're at the supply house. And so we're finding great success in that.
Where do you make them in the U.S.? Do you make them in Idaho or where?
Here's the great thing, because we really strive to be greener and more eco-friendly all the time. We manufacture in different locations about every 500 to 700 miles in the United States. We don't want those loads to come and I don't want to build a product that's great on a carbon footprint and then put it on a semi and ship it 3,000 miles each direction. So we manufacture all across the United States, source that as close to that end user as we're going to actually put them in the ground, and we do it that way. So the other thing is when you talk about a production builder, the first big question is, I know, but can you keep up with me? And so the answer is always, we triple source, and Amber did this from the beginning. If I have a plant go down in Iowa, I have one in Waterton, South Dakota. If Waterton goes down, I have one in Anthony, Texas. And so we've triple sourced everything for these economic glitches like we're enjoying right now. And so we really take pride in, because I was a contractor. Nothing was more aggravating than for me to call over and say, oh, I'll get that on Thursday's truck. I can have that in 2 weeks. I can have that in 4 weeks. The building is happening now. So this is one thing that Amber and I have been married 26 years. She knew this from my side, which was, if we don't have it, they can't use it. So in this economy, we have it.
Very good. Well, how do builders get in touch with you to learn more or take next steps on exploring?
They can either check on our website, monoslabezform.com. They can also traditionally
Is it Mono Slab letter Z?
Yep. Mono Slab, the letter E, the letter Z, form, FORM.com.
Okay. And it's you two that work directly with the builders, because you're nice. I think they'll want to talk to you.
We do. We still pride ourselves that we honestly deal with businesses. It comes to us. And the accountability is within Lance and I. And so it's worked out really well.
We've been married 26 years. We actually love what we do.
Yeah.
Where else does a couple of people from rural Idaho get to say, I've been to Richmond, Virginia. I've been here. I've been there. And we go see these folks. In all fairness, we put an awful lot of miles on driving and air travel, met an awful lot of nice people, but we care about their project.
No, I can see that you have passion for the company and for each other, and that's a great thing.
Yeah.
It is still fun.
Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing information with us. It's been very interesting, and certainly seems like something many, if not most, of our builders should be checking out. So until next time, thank you, and we'll see you around.
Thank you.